Welcome to Cultivated Live for Friday, August 9th, 2024. I am Jay Rosenthal. I'm the co-founder of Cultivated Media, the host of this program, which we call Cultivated Live. And since we launched in November, our goal at Cultivated has been to be cannabis industry first, providing you with the most important, insightful, useful, and timely information every single day. We do that through our daily newsletter, which you can find at cultivated.news. We do that through this daily live stream, which is on LinkedIn and YouTube. So follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to us on YouTube, get the newsletter in your inbox every single day at cultivated.news. And this is LJ Dawson. She is the editor-in-chief of the Outlaw Report, the most knowledgeable person in the DMV, that is DC, Maryland, and Virginia, when it comes to cannabis. LJ, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me again, Jay. Happy to be here.
I'm glad you are, because as avid readers of the Outlaw Report here at Cultivated, and in today's newsletter, we have a story about that you put out about, let's call them unbelievable or really strong, or however you'd want to put it, sales numbers for the first half of the year from Maryland. It's going well there.
Yes, it's going very well. We all heard about the total year sales of the first year of adult use. Maryland legalized adult use cannabis last July, or the market launched last July. So we heard these staggering numbers of like 1 billion in total market sales, which includes medical, but medical is a small fraction of that 1 billion. And we found that Maryland actually smoked 44 tons of just cannabis bud in the first 6 months of 2024. So that's a lot.
It's a lot. And let me ask you a couple of questions. Is it a lot because the market was pretty well developed even when they went rec? They had these dual licenses where medical dispensaries were allowed to / encouraged to sell adult use cannabis, but also because there's an appetite among Marylanders for legal cannabis, or both, all those things?
I think it's both, Jay. Maryland allowed medical dispensaries to automatically get an adult use endorsement. So there was no waiting for Marylanders. They were able to go to cannabis dispensaries that were traditionally medical and pick up recreational adult use cannabis products to smoke. And they also were able to do that with the medical products, right? So there was no wait or delay. Maryland already had a very robust medical program going, and the way they set it up was a really easy market launch, and they've obviously taken full advantage of that. But there is a voracious appetite in Maryland for recreational cannabis use. Just to give you guys an idea, in the first 6 months of 2024, there was almost $400 million of just adult use sales and a little under $200 million of medical. So the adult use market is just totally eclipsing the medical market there.
And something that you also write about is that Maryland is, of course, a state that loves its cannabis, was well positioned, as you said, to address the market. And it's surrounded, this is also important, surrounded by not yet full-born legal markets: Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virginia, West Virginia, and DC, which has to account for some portion of those legal sales. And also must impact certainly the medical sales in DC. Do we see that? Have we seen that effect, or can you extrapolate some of that? Like, how much of this is out of state, or actually DC residents saying it's so much easier to go buy cannabis in Maryland? Or can we just sort of tease that out a little bit?
Yeah, so we didn't look at the breakdown for Maryland, but we do know that DC does keep track of its medical sales, and the market's been really struggling since the legalization of adult use in Maryland. Maryland is not very far from DC. We know that Virginia is still in the dark ages. They have a very expensive, not very many options medical market in that state. And so anyone in DC who wants to legally buy adult use recreational cannabis has to go to Maryland, and Maryland is not far away. PG County, Baltimore, those are very close for people that are DC residents. And so we did see some of, in 2023, in the April before Maryland legalized adult use, we saw some of the highest medical market sales that we've ever seen in the history of DC's medical market. And then immediately after Maryland legalized adult use, we just saw a crash. And that is continued to just be honestly depressing and sad.
Yeah.
DC was trying to expand its medical market at the beginning of 2023. This was something that passed in 2022. So they were actually ahead of the ball for Maryland, but Maryland caught them quickly and has just skyrocketed past them. And so we're seeing DC really struggle with its medical market. That's for a lot of reasons, but definitely having this close, huge adult use market is one of them that is really just draining customers and sales out of the DC market.
Yeah, this has come up a number of times even this week as Ohio has legalized and their adult use sales come online. There, of course, will be implications for most notably Michigan, which has a lot of Ohio residents living right on the border and buying cannabis in Michigan. But it'll also have implications on a state like Pennsylvania and like between Maryland and New Jersey and New York, putting pressure on Pennsylvania and Ohio putting pressure on Pennsylvania. Like this puts pressure on a state like Pennsylvania to legalize too. And so we're a ways away. And I'd sort of love to ask you of like whatever these markets will look normalized in terms of size, who their customer base is. We won't really know until we have, adult use in DC or adult use in Virginia and, Pennsylvania is full born. Like we are in this in between time, let's say, which has an indefinite amount of time of in between. But like the sales of each state will not be the same when these states come online, when these other states come online. Now, it may be higher, but there are people that are buying legal cannabis in Maryland that live in Pennsylvania, that live in DC. We just don't know how many, how frequently, what their patterns are like until we sort of normalize cannabis all up and down the East Coast. But these are the things that sort of a Maryland market will have to deal with as it continues to grow. And I wonder if there's any thinking in Maryland like this is a great time horizon right now to like take advantage, but also we know that things will change over time because more states will come online.
Absolutely. I mean, we joke in DC that Maryland is the land of MSOs. A lot of the dispensaries in Maryland were actually multi-state operators, some of the biggest ones that we see across the nation. And so this head start they got because it was not new businesses, to be very clear, that were launching adult use sales. It's been just previously medical licensed businesses that are now able to do adult sales. And so that means that these billions of dollars in revenue, millions of dollars in like profit that these businesses are seeing is going directly to the coffers of these multi-state operators for the most part. And I think it really goes to show like how having capital and being able to stake out a state that is not yet legal can really pay off for some of these big operators, but also the amount of money and capital and resources that you have to just lose money for years. I mean, obviously this is paying off for the previously licensed medical operators in Maryland, but it's also going to be really interesting to see how this plays out and it impacts the over 200 licensees that won lottery licenses this spring in Maryland. MCA, the regulatory agency, lotteried all these licenses off, and they actually have 18 months to set up and open officially. And some of those licensees may not make it through the verification process. They might not get to the finish line. It's unclear what will happen with those licenses after. But either way, you can imagine being a new business trying to get a piece of this pie after you're almost 2 to 3 years behind an established business that has everything worked out. And I actually think that's one of the bigger concerns about the Maryland market that I've been hearing from stakeholders and small businesses and independent, underground people who are like, we don't know how this product is going to hold up and how these sales are going to hold up and how this is going to be actually equitable if we're so behind these other big businesses. And to be clear too, this is a question, right? Like DC's market will have a unique market aspect when we miraculously get adult use eventually, right? Maryland will, Pennsylvania will. And so 5 years from now, will DC be known for craft cannabis and really good, unique strains that's really well cultivated? And will Maryland be known as kind of like the Walmart of cannabis? Because that's some of what's already going on there. We just don't know.
Yeah. And which we've also talked about this in previous weeks, is that would be an amazing thing for DC to sort of stake that claim. And they will need places to grow that cannabis in DC right, if that were the case. And that is a different issue. I encourage you to read that story on the Outlaw Report as well, because there's unique challenges to DC's market, both with land, regulatory environment, the city, not versus the state, but the city versus the federal government and Congress. And I will say, though, that this is also news quasi-related to DC, is that, there's a new ticket running on the Democratic side, and both of those people for the first time are pro-cannabis reforms and even legalization. So we will see how that enters to the political market, the political landscape over the next couple months, but also if they are elected, how that affects the federal government's view of cannabis as well, and which has an impact not only on the whole country of what the view of cannabis, but also more specifically, more locally on DC's market. And I guess, how do you prepare for that? Is it just like how you always prepare? You're just going to try to read tea leaves in Congress?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reading tea leaves in the DC market and in the cannabis industry in general, but specifically for us, I mean, no other market is as impacted by a presidential election as the DC market. We are still blocked from adult use sales by a writer, and Tim Walz being picked as the VP candidate, I think gives everyone a lot of hope for the whole administration that could be for the Harris-Walz ticket. Kamala has a little bit of a bad reputation just of towing the line, right? So even if she's pro legalization, she might not see it as a practical solution, but Walz has been very proactive in his home state. And I think that there's a new energization in that campaign. So people in DC think that, maybe we will be getting a Democratic presidential term where there's kind of just an acknowledgement that we were not before the ticket changed. And that was scary for the DC market for sure, especially as we go through all these changes. Rescheduling was looking dim. The writer was going to definitely be there, and we'll see if they pick it as something to focus on as a Democratic ticket, and then also as a potential Democratic administration.
Do you want to hear what Tim Walz said when he signed the legalization in Minnesota? I happen to have the video. You want to see it?
Yes, I would love to.
Hold on.
Prohibition has not worked. We need to put things in place that are safe. And for those who make the comments, we're certainly not advocating for our children. We're trying to make sure that there is a regulatory regime put in place. There are processes put in place. There's the ability for adults to make those decisions without criminalizing them. We know what the products are that are out there, and it just makes for a smoother market. Turning your back and pretending a problem doesn't exist, and for those who bring up, what about this, what about that, all of those things are happening right now. What this is meant to do is to try and reduce those facts, to reduce those chances, and to make cannabis and adult use cannabis safe and legal in Minnesota.
Yeah, he said it. I like the first, prohibition does not work. I just like that someone said it so plainly, and that's the Tim Walz mantra. It also falls in the category of mind your own damn business, which is his other sort of mantra. No, it's been an interesting week for the cannabis industry. It happens to coincide with this pending rescheduling, hopefully, decision. It happens to coincide also with earnings week for those same big companies that you were talking about. So there's a lot going on the political side of the U.S., political plus cannabis, and then cannabis too. There's a lot happening, which is why we need to talk to you very frequently, LJ.
Well, I'm always happy to be here, Jay, and tune in soon, guys. We'll have more updates from the DNV, and Cultivated always is keeping you up to date across the nation. So
perfect. And subscribe to the Outlaw Report. There's links in our newsletter. We'll put a link on this show notes as well. As always, thank you so much, LJ, for being here. That's it for this week, everybody. That's been Cultivated Live. We will be back. We actually won't be back on Monday. I'm doing a little bit of traveling. We'll be back on Tuesday for sure. Follow us on LinkedIn. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Get our newsletter at cultivated.news. Get their newsletter at the Outlaw Report. And we'll be back here next week. Remember, buy cannabis at your local dispensary. That's really important. LJ, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Jay.